After accidentally driving my husband to his death from anger, we both got a second chance at life. This time I refused to settle for less 50 years of marriage, and Orion Chin and I were still bickering like an old married couple when our hair had turned as white as snow. You're just a money grubber. You're just waiting for me to kick the bucket so you can inherit my 8-figure Alipay balance. Who cares about your measly hundreds of millions? I'm worth billions now. You ungrateful woman. Where do you think you got those billions? I gave them to you. If my one true love hadn't married someone else, I'd never have married you. Orion Chin, mark my words. If I could be reborn, I'd never marry you. Who'd want to put up with your nonsense for a lifetime? Same here. Zara Lin, if I get a do-over, I won't spend a single cent on you. At that exact moment, Orion and I both dropped dead from pure rage. The next time I opened my eyes, I was back on the first day of kindergarten. The very first day I'd met Orion Chin. I rushed to the kindergarten in a fluster, and from a distance I spotted him, a cute, cherubic little boy holding 2 gleaming gold bars in his hands, yelling at me across the playground. Zara Lin. The gold bars you love so much. I brought 2. Take them and you can never marry anyone else. Do you hear me? Orion and I were what people called quarrelsome lovers. We'd been classmates since kindergarten through primary school all the way to high school. We'd bickered non-stop for as long as we'd known each other. Everyone thought we'd end up never speaking to each other again. So when we sent out our wedding invitations to all our old classmates, half of them thought we were playing a prank. As a result, not a single classmate showed up to our wedding. Naturally, we blamed each other for the disaster. Neither of us cracked a smile the entire ceremony. By the time the wedding video was done filming, we looked like 2 reluctant heirs forced into a marriage of convenience. Miserable and resentful. So much so that we never even watched the wedding video, not even after our children were born. I loved Orion Chin. I'd loved him ever since kindergarten. But when I asked him why he'd married me, he'd said, "Because I felt sorry for you, no one else would have you. As your lifelong arch-nemesis, I reluctantly took you in even though you're a handful. Besides, my one true love got married. I'll never love anyone else in this life. Might as well marry you instead of a complete stranger." That sentence stuck with me until the day I died. It was a constant reminder. Orion Chin didn't love me. And I shouldn't love him either. We'd both be better off if we just annoyed each other to death, never to cross paths again in our next lives. In the end, things played out exactly as I'd thought. But I'd never imagined we'd both get a second chance at life. What happened next, however, was nothing like I'd expected. When that little Orion Chin stuffed those 2 gold bars into my tiny hands not even big enough to wrap around them, my palms trembled so violently I could barely hold on. What in the world was going on? Had Orion Chin lost his mind? I stared at the gold bars, my mouth watering uncontrollably. At 7 years old, I didn't fully grasp how valuable they were. But in my past life, I'd lived to be 70. I knew exactly how priceless these 2 1,000-gram gold bars would be in 30 years' time. I looked up at Orion, wishing I had a phone to record this moment. "Are you sure you want to give me these 2 gold bars?" Orion's clear, innocent eyes sparkled with pure, unadulterated sincerity. He nodded his head vigorously like his life depended on it. "My family has tons of these. They're yours now." I wasted no time shoving the gold bars down the back of my pants, covering them up with my shirt so no one could see. "Once you give them to me, you can't take them back. Not now, not ever, even if you regret it later." However, 2 1,000-gram gold bars were far too eye-catching to hide. That night, as soon as I got home, my mom caught me red-handed. That very evening, my mom marched me over to the Chin household, dragging me by the ear with the 2 gleaming gold bars in her hand. Orion and I sat on the sofa, staring at each other wide-eyed, neither of us daring to say a word. Orion's mom, my beautiful, gentle mother-in-law from my past life, looked so young now. Tears welled up in my eyes at the sight of her. Aunt Chin saw me tearing up and thought I was upset about having to return the gold bars. "Oh, look at your daughter, she loves my son's gift so much. You should just let her keep them. We have plenty more gold bars at home. Think of them as a welcome gift. My generous, wonderful mother-in-law. I love you." Unfortunately for me, my mom was a woman of integrity, a straight-arrow police officer. She ignored my pitiful puppy dog eyes and placed the gold bars firmly on the coffee table. "We can't accept such an expensive gift for no reason. My Czar might be too young to understand, but as an adult I know better than to take something so valuable from a little boy. Thank you for Orion's kind gesture, but we'll have to pass. Please tell Orion to come play with Czar more often. I wanted to scream. I glared at the 2 gold bars, my heart breaking as they slipped out of my grasp. Suddenly, I noticed Orion sitting across from me, mouthing something to me slowly, 1 word at a time. I squinted my eyes, trying to read his lips. After what felt like an eternity, I finally figured out what he was saying. Don't worry. Tonight I'll sneak them to you. A chill ran down my spine, cold sweat breaking out all over my body. I waved my hands frantically, shaking my head. No need. My mom's a cop. I don't want us both to get beaten black and blue with her police baton. Orion Chin had changed. He was nothing like the arrogant, infuriating Orion I'd known in my past life. It was like he'd been possessed by some kind of alien creature. After his gold bar plan failed miserably, Orion started bringing me all sorts of snacks and toys to school every day. Unfortunately, every single one of them was strictly forbidden by the kindergarten rules. As a result, Orion and I ended up getting detention every single day, forced to stand outside the classroom door, counting the fallen leaves until I fell asleep from boredom. Every time I woke up, I'd find myself lying on Orion's chubby little lap. His round, pink cheeks would be flushed a bright red like he was holding something in. Was he dying to pee? One day I pretended to be asleep but peeked open one eye. I was about to tell him to go to the bathroom when I heard him whisper something so softly I almost missed it. Sigh. I wish I could grow up faster. In that moment it hit me like a ton of bricks. So Orion had been reborn too. He wanted to grow up faster. Which meant he was eager to meet Clara Fong as soon as possible. Clara Fong, his first love, his one true love, the only reason he'd agreed to marry me in our past life. If he'd been reborn as well, this time he'd definitely choose to marry Clara Fong instead of me. Realizing this, I finally understood why Orion was being so nice to me all of a sudden. In this lifetime he wouldn't let Clara Fong slip through his fingers. Which meant he had no reason left to pick fights with me. After all, we'd spent decades bickering and hurting each other in our past lives. In the end, he'd been the one to drive me to my death from anger. He must be racked with guilt. So his kindness now was nothing more than a way to make up for all the years of misery he'd put me through. With that realization, I suddenly felt a wave of relief wash over me. If only I'd hidden those 2 gold bars better. They would have been the perfect compensation for all the emotional damage he'd caused me. Even if it was damage from my past life. While Orion first met Clara Fong when we were in junior high, I counted down the days on my fingers, determined to squeeze as much money as I could out of Orion before junior high started. But there was only so much a kid could spend and his allowance was pitifully small. By the time I graduated from primary school, I'd only managed to save up a measly 125,800 yuan. That was less than 1,000th of the fortune I'd fleeced from Orion in my past life. No matter how unwilling I was to admit it. Junior high was just around the corner. And once it started, I knew I couldn't cling to Orion like I used to. I went home feeling heartbroken and begged my mom to transfer me to a different junior high, ready to pull off the classic heartbroken second female lead runs away from her love storyline. To my utter shock, my request earned me a severe beating from my mom. I'm an upstanding police officer. Do you expect me to break the law for you? Using my authority to get you transferred plus bribing school officials. Zarlin, you've got some nerve. If I don't teach you a lesson today, I'm not your mother. The next day I dragged my sore, bruised butt back to the same junior high I'd attended in my past life, assigned to the exact same class. And there, sitting in the classroom, were the familiar faces of Clara Fong and Orion Chin. Junior high Orion was already starting to look like the handsome guy he'd grow up to be. From what I remembered, every single girl in the class had a crush on him. But me. I was head over heels in love with him. I felt my heart flutter, that familiar, painful flutter, and a wave of sorrow washed over me. This crush was doomed from the start. From today onward, it would become my motivation to study like there was no tomorrow. If I could get into Tsinghua or Peking University, surely I'd be able to let go of this unrequited love. But then, the results of our mock monthly exam came out. First place, Orion Chin. With a perfect score, a full 100 points. Leaving everyone else in the dust. I stared at the report card, dumbfounded. Orion hadn't been this smart in my past life. We'd both gotten a second chance to study everything again, so why was his score so much higher than mine? I looked down at my math test paper, which had a measly 58 scrawled across the top, and wanted to tear it to shreds. Why couldn't I get the same lucky protagonist-like script as all the heroines in those rebirth novels? Tomorrow's the weekend. I'll come to your house and tutor you, okay? Also, my mom brought back some Dubai chocolates from her trip abroad. I saved a whole big box just for you. I'll bring them tomorrow. Orion appeared beside my desk, his voice soft and warm. As soon as he finished speaking, gasps of envy erupted from the girls all around us. Sir, you're so lucky. The class heartthrob is being this nice to you. I didn't say a word. Over to the side, Clara Fong packed her books quietly, not sparing us so much as a single glance. I shot Orion a sideways look. You must be trying to show off by being nice to me to make Clara Fong jealous. Because Claire was sitting right behind me. What a shame his little plan was backfiring spectacularly. For the sake of the billions he'd given me in my past life, I supposed I should help him out a little. With that thought in mind, I turned around and grabbed Clara Fong's hand. Clara, are you free this weekend? Orion's bringing chocolate. Come to my house. I'll split half with you, okay? Oh, and didn't you say you struggled with the monthly exam too? Orion can tutor both of us. He got first place with a perfect score. He's super smart. As soon as the words left my mouth, Orion suddenly let out a loud shout, Zara Lynn. I was so startled by his outburst that, out of habit from our past life bickering, I didn't even think twice. I swung my hand and slapped him hard across the face. Shut up. You're yelling like a maniac. Orion clutched his stinging cheek, his eyes welling up with tears as he stared at me, hurt and confused. Clara Fong watched the whole scene unfold, her face turning deathly pale with shock. After a long, awkward silence, she forced a smile and replied, "And no thanks. I don't like chocolate." Even after I'd slapped him silly. The next day Orion Chin still showed up at my front door right on time. He was hugging that giant box of chocolates, one that was practically taller than he was, knocking timidly on the door. For the sake of the chocolates, I let him in. The second he stepped inside, I immediately distanced myself from the whole mess. Clara Fong doesn't like chocolate, you know. It's useless for you to bring so much, she won't even touch it. Orion stared at me with a face that looked like he'd just stepped in dog poop. Zarlin, did you get kicked in the head by a donkey or something? You're the one who got kicked by a donkey. 1,000 times over. With the two of us on the verge of another screaming match, I quickly racked my brain for 1,000 clever insults ready to pounce. But suddenly, the Orion in front of me hesitated, like he had something to say but couldn't bring himself to spit it out. In the end, he set the chocolate box down with a heavy sigh. Fine. I got kicked 1,000 times. I deserve it. I asked for it. Happy now. It was like throwing a punch with all my might only to hit thin air. I froze, stunned. Orion put the chocolate down, then pulled a huge stack of exam papers and textbooks out of his school bag, looking straight at me. Let's study. This time we're going to get into Tsinghua or Peking University together. The battles between Orion and me had been an annual tradition in our past life. We'd hated each other's guts, but our son? He'd been a straight A student through and through, scoring first place in every monthly exam without even breaking a sweat. On the day of the college entrance exam, he'd gotten into Tsinghua University practically effortlessly. At our son's college acceptance banquet, Orion had laughed and said, "He gets his smarts from me. If I hadn't wasted my junior high years mooning over someone, I would have gotten into Tsinghua too." When I heard that, I'd thought of Clara Fong instantly. A wave of bitterness had washed over me, souring my mood completely. Without thinking, I'd shot back right there in front of everyone. They say sons take after their mothers. Even if you hadn't been mooning over someone, you never would have gotten into Tsinghua. The second the words left my mouth, the two of us had started bickering like crazy at the banquet. "It's all your fault I didn't get into Tsinghua. With that pig brain of yours, you never would have made it even without me." Our son had stood there holding a glass of Coke, entertaining hundreds of guests all by himself, completely unfazed by our antics. He'd even had the nerve to explain to the guests, "Don't mind my parents, they bicker like this just for fun. The more they fight, the more in love they are. Hey everyone, put your wine bottles away, otherwise they'll start throwing punches soon enough." Thankfully, our son had always been a laid-back kid. Our constant bickering had never affected his personality or his life path in the slightest. With his grandparents doting on him left and right. From the day he was born, his future had been bright as day. Add to that his top-notch grades and he'd sailed through life without a single obstacle. Alright, I had to admit it. Our son was the only thing Orion and I had ever agreed on, our perfect mutual pride and joy. Thinking about our son, I suddenly felt a twinge of longing, a desire to do it all over again with Orion Chin. After all, having a son like that meant I'd never have to worry about my future ever again. I was still lost in my thoughts, when suddenly a textbook slammed hard against my head. What are you daydreaming about? Do you even understand this problem? I jolted back to reality, locking eyes with Orion Chin, eyes that were 8 points identical to our son's. Before I could stop myself, the words slipped out of my mouth. Orion Chin. Hey, what if we had a baby? Maybe it was the sheer audacity of my words. Maybe it had struck a nerve deep inside Orion Chin. Orion screamed at the top of his lungs, Zara Lynn, have you lost your mind? Then he covered his face and fled my house as fast as his legs could carry him. I stared at his retreating figure, one that was moving faster than a scared rabbit, and clicked my tongue in annoyance. Fine, we won't have a baby. No need to act like you're saving yourself for your precious one true love. We're not even legal adults yet, like I'd actually force you or something. But Orion was already too far away to hear me. He sprinted into the waiting Chin family nanny car downstairs and told the driver to step on the gas and get him as far away from my house as humanly possible. After that day, maybe Orion Chin had finally come to his senses. He started keeping his distance from me. But that didn't stop him from leaving little surprises in my desk drawer every single day: snacks, treats, the latest iPad Pro, a fancy study tablet, and piles of study materials. Occasionally, when I'd blown all my allowance on my favorite celebrities, I'd find a few celebrity posters in my drawer, with stacks of 100 yuan bills tucked inside them. Alright, fine. I knew I shouldn't accept all these things, but I just couldn't help myself. After all, he was hitting all my favorite things right on the nose. Late at night, I'd stare at the male celebrities' abs on the posters, sighing dreamily, while pulling the red 100 yuan bills out from between the pages, thinking to myself, if only he'd take a little longer to get together with Clara Fong, maybe I could enjoy this kind of life a bit longer? But the more I thought about it, the less interested I became in my celebrity crushes. After that, it was like I'd caught some kind of virus. Every time I looked at those posters, I'd think of Orion Chin and Clara Fong. And suddenly my idols would lose all their appeal. With my newfound lack of interest in celebrity chasing, my life had become boring. So I started flipping through the study materials Orion had been leaving in my desk drawer. The study tablet he'd given me was amazing. It had access to tons of expensive question banks. I started working through the problems, hitting the books hard. Before I knew it, I'd scored a spot in the top 10 of my class in the final exam. Once I'd tasted the sweet victory of being a top student, I studied even harder, more determined than ever. The snacks Orion left in my desk drawer kept getting more and more plentiful. But I'd completely forgotten to eat them. They also kept getting more expensive and more varied. I thought to myself, eventually all these things would end up going to Clara Fong anyway. Might as well do her a favor and pass them along early. So after that, every time Orion gave me snacks, I'd sneak them into Clara Fong's desk drawer instead. And I'd make sure to tell her, those snacks are from Orion Chin, he bought them specially for you. Isn't he so sweet to you? I still remember the look on Clara Fong's face that day. Her eyes had widened to the size of saucers and she'd looked completely shocked. She must have never imagined that the top student and heartthrob of the entire school had a crush on her. She must have thought I was such a nice person for helping him out. There you go, Orion Chin. I've done you a solid this lifetime. Now you can't argue with me anymore, okay? I silently said to him in my heart. I discovered that studying was actually kind of addictive. After I'd broken into the top 10 of the entire school, I suddenly fell head over heels in love with learning. I started studying day and night tirelessly like a woman possessed. The day I'd broken into the top 3 of the school, I'd glanced over at Orion Chin, who'd been dominating the top spot for as long as anyone could remember, and noticed his face had turned as black as thunder. But I just smiled to myself, triumphant. See that? Who needs love when you're this awesome? I'll prove it to you once and for all. I can get into Tsinghua or Peking University too. Just as I'd started hitting the books harder than ever, something terrible happened to Clara Fong's family. And by some cruel twist of fate, Orion Chin had stopped coming to school the exact same days that Clara's family had their accident. The high school entrance exam was just around the corner. Would he still be able to get into the key high school like this? He was so busy comforting Clara Fong that he didn't even care about his grades anymore. A twinge of jealousy shot through my heart, but I quickly slapped myself awake. A love-struck fool who doesn't care about studying is no real love-struck fool. You have to drown your sorrows in textbooks and forget about that unworthy man. That slap really did wake me up. I studied even harder, determined to beat Orion Chin at the high school entrance exam this time. Orion Chin and Clara Fong had both been missing from school for over 2 weeks. Finally, after half a month, they both showed up to class at the same time with matching dark circles under their eyes. I stared at their two figures, a sour feeling bubbling up in my chest. How jealous-making. Even their dark circles are couple goals. Love might be beautiful, but grades are worth so much more. The things we can't have only make us stronger. I forced my gaze back down to the 5-year high school entrance exam practice book in my hands. Even though Orion Chin was back at school now, it didn't affect my determination to ace the high school entrance exam one bit. Fueled by my newfound diligence and drive, I scored first place in the entire school and got into the top key high school in the city. Orion Chin, on the other hand, had seen his grades drop off a cliff after he'd come back to school. I suspected it was because he'd been too busy dating Clara Fong to focus on his studies, but I had no proof. Other than their matching dark circles, they didn't even speak to each other at school. Every time they passed each other in the hallway, they'd pretend not to see each other. I guess they were just trying to lay low. After all, the high school entrance exam was right around the corner. If the teachers found out they were dating, they'd be doomed. And just like that, once the high school entrance exam results were officially announced, Orion Chin, who'd only just barely scraped by the key high school cutoff, and I ended up in the same key high school again. But this time Clara Fong hadn't gotten into the key high school. This came as a bit of a shock to me. At the same time, I couldn't help but blame Orion Chin for it. After all, no matter how much you like someone, you shouldn't let them fall behind in their studies. It was totally unacceptable. Since I was someone who'd been given a second chance at life, I decided to wish them well. On graduation day, I'd even prepared a special gift for Clara Fong. To my surprise, instead of looking sad about not getting into the key high school, she looked incredibly happy. When she saw my gift, she grinned from ear to ear. Speaking of which, Zarlin, I really have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I never would have gotten the chance to study abroad. You're my lucky star. Study abroad? Her words hit me like a ton of bricks, leaving my head spinning. She was going to study abroad. What about Orion Chin? What in the world was going on here? I was about to ask her more questions when someone suddenly grabbed the back of my shirt and pulled me away from Clara Fong's desk. In the hallway, Orion Chin stood in front of me. His face was dark and stormy. No doubt he was upset about Clara Fong going abroad. What were you talking to Clara Fong about? He asked me, his voice dead serious. Come on. It's not like I was the one paying for her to go abroad. Why was he mad at me? Nothing. It was nothing. She didn't say anything weird to you, did she? He pressed, his face growing even more tense and worried. Thinking about how we'd been husband and wife for decades in our past life, I'd had just about enough of his nonsense. Orion Chin, if you can't win over your precious one true love, that's your problem. What kind of man threatens someone else instead of taking action? Clara Fong is going abroad. If you have any balls at all, you'll go after her instead of complaining about not marrying her when we're old and gray. My sudden outburst left him frozen for 3 whole seconds. After those 3 seconds, he stared at me with a look of complete and utter disbelief. He reached out and touched my forehead. You don't have a fever. So why are you being so stupid? Me. Enough of this nonsense. Study hard. Get into Tsinghua or Peking University. Zarlin, my family has a whole vault full of gold bars. If you want some, you're not allowed to date anyone in high school. Got it. Whether I date someone or not is none of your weight. Gold bars. That was totally unfair. How could someone be this shameless? Attacking me right where I was weakest. It was just 3 years of not dating. How hard could that be? I rubbed my hands together, grinning like a little fox. In that case, we need to sign a contract first. How many gold bars will you give me if I don't date anyone until high school graduation? The final agreement Orion Chin and I settled on was 10 gold bars. I figured it was his reward for acing the college entrance exam. After all, the Chin family was loaded. My generous, beautiful, elegant mother-in-law had always spoiled him rotten with lavish rewards. Besides, the Chin family had dabbled in business early on, then dominated the finance industry, raking in fortunes. Their gold reserves were beyond anyone's wildest imagination. Sometimes, when I was worn out from studying, I'd find myself wondering, what happened to our son after Orion and I passed away? He must have been swimming in inherited wealth, drowning in luxury, right? That last tiny flicker of pity for Orion vanished without a trace. Truly, if only I could have another child with Orion Chin in this lifetime. The second that thought popped into my head, I immediately slapped myself hard across the face. Zarlin, you're hitting the books for 8 hours straight today. Make your body remember who's boss. And just like that, every time I thought about Orion Chin, I'd throw myself into studying like a woman possessed. For the entire 3 years of high school, I didn't even spare a single glance for any other boys. My days were a monotonous cycle of home and school, nothing but non-stop studying. Even on rare holidays, I'd hole up in the library, cramming knowledge like there was no tomorrow. As for Orion Chin, our only form of contact was the endless stream of nutritious breakfasts, lunches, snacks, and treats that magically appeared in my desk drawer every single day. These little gifts did wonders for my health, keeping me energized and fueled up to crush the college entrance exam. 3 years flew by in the blink of an eye. With Orion and I no longer bickering day in and day out, both our grades skyrocketed to new heights. The day before the college entrance exam, I was buried in review materials at home when a WeChat message suddenly popped up on my phone. Come downstairs. It was from Orion Chin. Reluctantly, I put down my exam papers and headed downstairs. There, standing right in front of me, was Orion Chin wearing a qipao. I almost choked on my own spit. Why oh why you? Orion Chin. What in the world is wrong with you? Did you study so hard your brain turned to mush? Orion's face turned bright red as he fidgeted awkwardly, glaring at me. It's for good luck. Qipao sounds like winning the flag. It means acing the exam. I'm wearing it for you. What do you know about any of this? I froze, staring at him for the first time, really looking at him. Thank you, Orion Chin. You've done so much for me just for this exam. Orion's eyes lit up with surprise, like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Zarlin, you finally noticed? Yeah. So, after the exam let's talk. Properly. If we get into the same university. The second those words left my mouth, Orion's eyes sparkled like stars. He grabbed my hand tightly, his voice steady and determined, every word crystal clear. Deal. I'll see you at university. The day of the college entrance exam dawned bright and sunny, the sun blazing overhead. We arrived at the exam venue bright and early. Orion's exam room was on the complete opposite side of the campus from mine. We didn't even get a chance to see each other between tests. Even though this was my second time taking the exam, the nerves were just as intense as ever. I kept my cool, nailed every single test, and the second I finished the last paper, I sprinted straight to Orion's exam building. But before I could even spot him, I saw her, Clara Fong, the girl who was supposed to be studying abroad. Right then and there, Clara was standing at the school gate, wearing a stunning qipao, scrolling through her phone. No need to guess, she must have been waiting for Orion Chin. The sight of her instantly brought back memories of that night, Orion showing up at my door wearing that qipao. I'd totally gotten the wrong idea. I'd actually thought he had a crush on me. Thank goodness I hadn't confessed my feelings. That would have been so embarrassing. He'd probably just been trying to wish me luck, that's all. After all, this time around neither of us had any regrets left, no more pining for things we could never have. Too bad Orion Chin's regrets had never included me. With that realization, I let out a long, deep sigh. Truly, love is nice and all, but a bright future is worth so much more. Zarlin. From now on you're chasing gold bars full speed ahead. Even though I hated the thought of giving up those 10 gold bars, I had to consider Clara's feelings. I decided to follow my mom's life philosophy. Never accept gifts without merit. After all, 10 gold bars were worth over 1,000,000 yuan. If Orion and Clara ever got married and brought this up again, that amount of money would be more than enough to land me in jail for bribery. Once I'd made up my mind, I blocked Orion Chin on every single contact platform that very night. Then I took the travel fund my mom had promised me as a college entrance exam reward and set off on a cross-country road trip across China. In my past life I'd scored horribly on the college entrance exam, so I'd spent the entire summer vacation working part-time jobs. Later when I was older I'd look back on that summer with nothing but regret. Life is long, there's plenty of time to work and make money. But the summer of your 18th birthday? It only comes once and it's gone forever. Why hadn't I traveled more, taken more photos and videos to cherish, when I was young and beautiful? I'd always dreamed of doing that but I'd never gotten the chance. Now that I'd been reborn I finally could. That summer vacation I used the 20,000 yuan bonus my mom gave me to go on a budget backpacking trip across over 20 cities in China. By the end of the trip I'd gotten tans several shades darker. I arrived back home exactly 1 week before the start of university. When I unlocked the front door, there sitting on my living room sofa, was Orion Chin, wearing nothing but a pair of loose home shorts. I froze for 3 full seconds. Grabbing my suitcase I turned to bolt back outside. But Orion suddenly jumped up and grabbed my wrist, yanking me back. "Zarlin, you dare run away one more time?" I was dumbfounded. "Orion Chin, are you crazy? What are you doing in my house?" Orion stared at me, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the veins popping out. "I paid your parents' rent to stay here all summer just to wait for you to come back. Now come here, explain to me. Why did you block me and disappear without a trace for a whole month right after the exam? Did you even care about the 10 gold bars we agreed on?" The mention of those 10 gold bars instantly brought back the image of Clara Fong standing at the school gate. I didn't get it. Why was Orion Chin trying to have his cake and eat it too? Sure, I loved him, but that didn't mean I was willing to be his side chick. What made me even angrier was this. I'd backpacked across over 20 cities, thinking I could finally forget Orion Chin and start a brand new life. But everywhere I went all I could think about were the memories of Orion and me traveling to those same places in my past life. It turned out he'd taken me to every single one of those cities later on. But back then we'd bickered nonstop the entire time, so I'd completely forgotten all about those trips. I'd always thought our lives together were nothing but endless arguments and unhappiness. But during this journey all I could remember were the good times, the sweet moments. All the little things he'd done to take care of me one by one. The more I thought about it, the sadder I got. Why did Orion Chin have to love Clara Fong? Why couldn't I be the one he'd loved all along, the one he'd never stopped pining for? I was already heartbroken enough as it was, so why did the first thing I saw when I got home have to be Orion Chin? The second he grabbed me, all the pent-up sadness and frustration inside me finally exploded. Tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. "Orion Chin, why do you keep showing up in my life over and over again? If you don't love me, then leave me alone. We're not husband and wife anymore. I'm letting you go, isn't that enough for you?" Whether it was my tears or my screaming that scared him, Orion Chin immediately panicked, fumbling to wipe my tears away with his hands. He stammered for what felt like an eternity before finally managing to choke out a sentence. "You're letting me go? Letting me go what? I've held back from arguing with you for over 10 years, so why are you still this stubborn, hot-headed donkey? You stopped arguing with me because you felt guilty about what happened in our past life, didn't you? I don't need your pity, This time I didn't get to finish my sentence. Orion Chin leaned in and kissed me hard, his lips pressing firmly against mine, so hard it left me completely dazed and confused. After what felt like forever he pulled away. He glared at me, his eyes blazing with anger. "Zarlin, are you really that stupid? I wanted a do-over so badly. I wanted to give you a real romantic love story this time around. But what did you do? What were you even thinking? You're still hung up on your precious one true love, aren't you? You were talking about her right before you died in our past life. I was just trying to make your dream come true. So stop pretending with me. My one true love. My one true love is Clara Fong? Why don't you ask her why she went abroad?" Orion Chin shouted, getting more and more worked up with every word. We were practically bickering like we had in our past life all over again. I couldn't hold back anymore. I rolled up my sleeves, pulled out my phone and held it up to him. "Fine. I'll ask her. You think I'm scared? I'll call her right now. Whoever backs out is a coward." I waited for Orion Chin to stop me. But this time he just stood there staring at me, completely motionless. When I hesitated to hit dial, he scoffed, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Well, Are you the coward then? Furious, I hit the call button without a second thought. It rang a few times before Clara Fong picked up, her voice lazy and sleepy. Hello, Zarlin. You're back? Orion Chin has been going crazy looking for you. Why are you calling me? What was the real reason you and Orion Chin took 2 weeks off school together? And don't lie to me, you wore that cheapao to the exam venue on purpose, didn't you? You were waiting for Orion Chin, weren't you? There was a long, dead silence on the other end of the line. Then suddenly, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the phone speaker. Oh my God! Are you out of your mind? Orion and I took time off because our grandfather passed away. We had to go back to our hometown for the funeral. Orion was devastated, he was so close to Grandpa, and I was upset too. And the cheapao. I wore it because my little brother was taking the exam too. Don't you dare say that ever again. Orion and I are cousins, our families are related within 3 generations. Zarlin, I'm begging you, please don't give me nightmares. I was completely frozen, rooted to the spot, my mind going blank. Orion Chin stared at me, his face twisted in disbelief and exasperation. We were married for decades in our past life. If you'd bothered to watch our wedding video even once, you would have seen Clara Fong standing right next to my mom in our family photo. In our past life, she messed around for years after failing her exams before finally going abroad. This time, I talked her mom into sending her overseas early so she wouldn't waste her life away. I even told her it was all your idea, I gave you the credit for it. And this is how you repay me. You've been holding on to that stupid joke I made years ago all this time. If you just bothered to think about it for 5 seconds, or even check the facts, you wouldn't have made such a ridiculous mistake. Orion Chin was so angry his face had turned deathly pale. I stood there, unable to say a single word. Zarlin, be honest with me, do you really love me? Or do you just love my gold bars? Orion Chin roared, his voice echoing through the room. I fell silent for a few seconds, then looked up at him, my eyes still glistening with tears. Can't I have both? This time around, Orion Chin and I both got into Tsinghua University. Since I'd officially become Orion Chin's girlfriend, our 2 families decided to throw a joint celebration banquet for our university admission. And at that banquet, Orion Chin and I got engaged on the spot. He hastily stuffed the 10 gold bars and a diamond ring into my hands, promising to give me a grand, perfect wedding ceremony after we graduated from university. I was in a daze the entire time. Everything Orion Chin did for me this time around was exactly what I'd dreamed of, what I'd rambled on and on about in our past life. A sincere proposal. A grand celebration. A perfect university life together. When I looked back, I realized Orion Chin had been mending every single regret from my past life bit by bit, turning them all into one beautiful memory after another. We no longer bickered, and our son came into the world as we'd hoped. This time, with our hair turned snow white, we leaned closely against each other. I smiled and asked him, if you loved me this much all along, why didn't you tell me in our past life? I did. Orion Chin looked at me. I left a will that said Clara Fong was my cousin. The one I loved was you, I never had any so-called one true love at all. Besides, the reason our son grew up so healthy and without any emotional scars is that every time we finished quarreling, I would go brainwash him. I love Mom, I'll never get divorced from Mom in my life. I'm Mom's most devoted man, so son, we have to protect Mom together. Even though I couldn't help quarreling with you non-stop out of spite, it was only because I thought you didn't love me, so I never wanted you to find out how deeply I loved you, a love that ran down to the marrow of my bones. I also wrote in the will that if I could go back to kindergarten, I would take gold bars to give you as a betrothal gift. Later, I really did go back to kindergarten. But the gold bars were seized by your mom. I laughed so hard that I doubled over, unable to utter a word. At that moment, I wished so badly to tell him that I loved him too, ever since kindergarten. Before the words could escape my lips, his kiss had already landed on mine. Silly girl, I saw right through your little crush on me this time around. Orion Chin's extra story when life restarted, every tiny detail of our love was magnified infinitely. It turns out that the very moment I fell in love with you, your eyes were already filled with nothing but me.